Hi, I'm Tilly, and I regret sleeping with my boyfriend. I mean, I did love him. He was much better than my ex, for example, who was a total nuthead. He nagged day and night about sleeping with me, but I couldn't because he was such a turnoff, and I kinda hated the way I looked naked. My body was weird. Despite this, my ex made fun of the things I'm self-conscious about, like how flat-chested I was, my stretch marks, and my big thighs. Until one day, he made fun of me and lifted up my shirt in front of his friends, and they all saw how small my boobs were. So, I broke up with him in front of everyone and told them that his weenie was little. Let's just say that he didn't take that insult easily. I didn't care though, because only 2 days after, I met Alistair, and he was so hot. But I was so out of his league, there was more chance of me being seduced by an alien from outer space than someone as drop-dead gorgeous as Alistair. But then, he asked me out for a milkshake. After that first date, yes, it really was a date, we started hanging out every Friday. I had to keep pinching myself. He took me to fancy restaurants and got me expensive gifts. The more I started to fall for him. But then one day, he gave me a little box. I honestly thought he was going to propose, and I actually wanted him to. But then I opened the box, and it was just a bracelet. The next time he gave me a gift, I didn't hold my breath. I was a fool to think he'd propose so soon. But this gift was a pretty big deal. It was a red lacy bra and panties. Whoa, I thought. Could I actually wear this? And then I saw the price tag, and it was $1,000. A few days later, he hit me up and said his parents were away. Yes! Finally, I was going to visit his palace, since he was loaded. I walked over there daydreaming about how I'd move in and become the lady of the house. But then, I found out that he lived in a trailer. Weird, but okay. He was still hot. Whatever, we'd live in a palace one day. What mattered was that I knew he loved me. Even though he never said it, we went straight to the sofa, and I knew what it meant. He wanted Netflix and chill. And soon, we were making out. One thing led to another, and we ended up on his bed. Before I knew it, he was unbuttoning my shirt. My whole body was screaming for him, but my stupid head wouldn't shut up, and I stopped him. I wasn't ready for him to see my body. I thought he'd try to convince me to keep going, like my stupid ex always did. But Alistair was better than that. I'd found myself a gentleman. He said that it was okay, kissed me on the forehead, and said that we could watch a movie instead. Then I remembered how horrible my ex was, and suddenly I wanted to do it. I wanted Alistair, and I didn't care about my insecurities. In fact, I threw them out the window. He was choosing a movie, so I took my chance and told him I needed to use the bathroom. I'll never forget the look on his face when I strolled back through wearing the red lingerie he'd got for me. He told me I was the most beautiful thing he'd ever seen, and as I kissed him, everything just went so smoothly. He was gentle and loving, and I forgot that I'd ever been insecure about my body. I was in love with this guy, and he was in love with me, and that was all that mattered. We fell asleep cuddling, and I didn't care that I was naked. When I woke up, his arms were still wrapped around my body. I quickly covered up because I didn't want him to see my weird-looking body in the sunlight. He woke up as I was getting dressed and told me to come back to bed. And that's when I decided to do it. I wanted him to know how I felt. So I took a deep breath and said, "Alistair, I love you." But then he was like, yeah, it's been real, but I got homework to do now. Okay, bye. I left, and he didn't even hug me goodbye. And from that moment onwards, he went MIA. I probably shouldn't have sent him 100 texts after, but I just couldn't let it go. I even went to his house to check up on him, and his mom told me he wasn't home. I cried so much my face puffed up, and for the whole week, I just buried myself under the covers. One night, my brother started banging on my door and asked if I was crying because of the photos. I told him to go away, but then he came in and gave me a weird hug and said, "I'm here for you, sis." I told him to go away because I really couldn't deal with his weird jokes right now. But then he gave me his phone and said, "Sorry this happened to you." I looked down and couldn't believe what I was seeing. It was a naked photo of me, out there on the internet for all to see. Well, let me go dig my own grave because how would I ever show my face outside again? It was Alistair. He'd done this. Why were all men such disgusting perverts? I texted Alistair telling him to go to hell and begged my brother not to tell Mom and Dad before I fixed this. He said he'd go beat this Alistair up if I wanted him to. But I knew I could handle it myself. Alistair suddenly started replying to my texts, saying that he was sorry and that he never meant for this to happen. He was begging for my forgiveness like a pathetic little loser, and then wrote this long-ass text saying he'd just thought I looked so beautiful and he'd wanted these photos as a memory. His excuse for how the photos got online? He said his friend had taken his phone and uploaded them behind his back. You probably think I'm stupid, but something in me wanted to forgive him. I still had feelings for him. He said he'd make it up to me and asked me to meet him down by the river the next day. So I went. Alistair had laid out a picnic blanket with all my favorite snacks, and he was crying. I'd never seen a guy cry like that before. I went and hugged him and told him his friend was a douchebag, but that I forgave him. We sat down, and he reached out for my hand, and then I heard footsteps. It was the cops. Perfect timing. They arrested Alistair and told me to go home and stay away from sexual predators in the future. I shouted to Alistair, "You didn't think I'd actually forgive you, did you? Are you that stupid? See you, sucker. Enjoy prison." Alistair kept shouting something as they marched him off. Something about how it was Carl, not him. Wait. What? Carl was my ex's name. Was Alistair friends with Carl? I got home and I called Carl. He picked up straight away and said, "Did you miss me, babe? Knew you'd come running back." Yuck, I hated him. But I arranged to meet up with him because I had to find out if he was the Carl that Alistair had been shouting about. As soon as I saw his smug face, I felt sick. We met in the park near my house, and he tried to lean in and kiss me. But then, I stopped him and asked outright whether he knew about the deal with Alistair. He walked towards me in a menacing way, like a complete creep, and confessed that he was behind the whole thing because I said that he had a tiny penis. Wow, seriously? Carl then said, "Did you seriously think Alistair had fallen in love with you? Come on, look at you, you're gross, thank God I didn't sleep with you. I paid him to date you and seduce you. I can't believe you fell for it and actually slept with him. You whore." Then he walked away, laughing. Then one day, a guy came up to me in gym class and said, "Such a waste. Pity Carl hadn't picked a hotter girl to share photos of." Suddenly, someone swooped in, and the next moment that guy was flat on his back, and this guy built like a wrestler was holding him to the ground. He introduced himself as Jasper and said, "He's bullshitting. I saw the photos too, and you're exactly my type." Then he winked at me, told me that he could totally take care of my ex and make my problem disappear. Whoa, did I just get saved by a random boy? And did he like me? Jasper quickly became my best friend. I told him about what Alistair and Carl did to me, and let's just say that he did things to them I can't mention here. Since that day, Alistair was out of my life until the day he got out of prison. I was hanging out with Jasper at my place, and a letter arrived for me. It was from Alistair. When would this guy give up? He said at first he'd asked me out because Carl had offered to buy him a car if he did it. And then he said he felt really guilty because he actually fell for me, and I was the only thing he could think about when he was in prison. Did he expect me to give a shit? The damage was already done. He'd been rotten from the beginning, and no amount of sucking up could change the way I felt about him now. And anyway, I was starting to fall for someone else. Someone who found my stretch marks sexy, and who shared my hatred for the opposite sex. Yep, that's right. Jasper and I were a couple now. I knew Alistair was still in love with me. So the next day, I sent him a letter saying that I would love to meet him at a party and that I was still in love with him. He seemed happy with my response. 2 days after, I met him and we had a few drinks. I told him that I was in love with him still and that I wanted him to come home with me that night. He, of course, agreed. When we entered the apartment, I gave him a small box and said that this was a little gift from me to repay him for the gifts he used to get me. When he opened the box, he found shiny yellow panties, and I told him that it was for him to wear. He blushed and asked me how did I know that he was into that. I wanted to puke, but I smiled and told him to put it on because I was dying to see him in it. 5 minutes later, Alistair got out of the bathroom wearing the yellow panties, and then I quickly took a picture, one after the other. Alistair got mad and he quickly reached for my phone, but as he was about to snatch it, Jasper showed up and stopped him. He told him to grab his stuff and go home. That day, I posted those pictures without Alistair's face with the caption, "Guess who?" Of course, everyone knew it was him, and he spent his time trying to deny it to everyone. But who was he kidding? Anyway, that was the day I got my revenge on Alistair. And as for Carl, let's just say I'm cooking something for him. I'm just waiting for the right time. What do you think of my story? Please share your comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories.